So I'm calling the Committee of the Whole to meeting in order. It's 7:41 p.m. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we have, as I mentioned earlier, 3 delegations. We're going to do a little bit of a change on the agenda this evening. So we're going to hear the 3 delegations. We're going to move on to the consent agenda, but when we get to the standing committees, we're going to start with planning and development. So that's going to be a bit of a change in the order for our schedule. But there are 3 delegations listed on the agenda for today, and each is allocated 10 minutes. Our staff will ring a bell to notify the presenters when you have 1 minute left to complete your delegation. So it's now time for the first delegation, and I want to welcome the first delegate from Cultivate Community Nonprofit Services to the podium. And you have 10 minutes to speak. Jeff Bray, Cultivate Community Nonprofit Services, regarding an overview of Cultivate Community Nonprofit Services 2023 achievements. And welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Yes, Jeff Bray, 4th generation Port Hope. I am the volunteer executive director and also the programming and events director for Cultivate Community, which we started back in 2015. And I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview on what we've done in the community in the last year, keep it a little light and fluffy for everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to do this. So just a quick little overview of what is Cultivate Community. We are a registered nonprofit arts organization. We've been operating in town since 2015 with a mission to strengthen our community by engaging local citizens in the discovery and celebration of arts and culture via grassroots leadership, creative partnerships, and innovative artistic programming. Back in 2017, we won a Tourism Industry of Ontario Award for Culinary Event of the Year. We have since become an arts organization, but food remains a really important part of what we do. And since we began, we have produced Cultivate Festival 7 times. We have produced Road to Cultivate free summer concert series in the park here twice, and our first annual Hibernate Festival in the winter of 2023 that took place across Port Hope. So just wanted to go through a few highlights of at an organization level from 2023. First is that we introduced our first annual Hibernate Festival, one that we'll be doing again in February of 2024. We were able to achieve $216,000 in grants for arts presentation, jobs, economic development, tourism, and capacity building. That is from federal government, that is from provincial government, that is from some from municipal government as well. We earned revenues of approximately $150,000 in ticket sales, food and beverage, and sponsorship, as well as merchandise. So we're working for that as well. One special thing that we were able to do this year was start an inclusivity, diversity, equity, and inclusion committee led by Jenny Frank over here. Thank you, Jenny. A volunteer-led committee to make sure we're able to do what we want to do in the community and make what we're doing as accessible to everybody. With that project, we achieved 7 new sponsors. We made up to 10 people in the committee, including folks who represented communities, Black communities, Indigenous, disabled communities, and as well as workers in the healthcare business in the community, representing places like Northumberland Child Care Development, 5 counties, and 3 Birds Art Therapy. We were able to hire a sponsorship coordinator this year with some funds from Ontario Trillium Foundation. With that same fund, we were able to complete a 3-year revenue diversification plan, which is really important to us, and it's going to really help us solidify ourselves over the next few years. And then just some quick overview of what we've been able to do online. We have a newsletter that we send out, once every couple of weeks that has over 2,400 people on it, and 50% of people open it every week. And we're speaking directly about what's going on in the community, what's interesting outside of Cultivate, but typically speaking within the arts and culture scene in the area. And we applied this year for charitable status as well, which will be a big thing for us. A quick little picture of our festival this year, and a young lady who was enjoying herself right at the front gates. So we just had our 7th annual Cultivate Festival, which took place September 22nd to 24th out at Haute Goat Farm in the rural ward. We're really proud of the fact that we have 3 different presentations that take place. One takes place in the rural ward, one takes place in downtown businesses, and one takes place in a municipal park in downtown Port Hope. This one was a particularly special one this year. It's our 2nd year out at Haute Goat Farm. We had great programming partners, including Greenwood Coalition and Song and Folk Camp and the Land Canadian Adventures. Through the IDEA program that we started, we were able to give away 500 weekend passes to children under 18, as well as sponsors and anybody who simply asked for one through our No Questions Asked policy. And we were able to, over the course of the weekend, attract 2,500 people to the festival, primarily young families, including 40% of people who came from outside Cobourg and Port Hope. Here are just some of the highlights from our festival. We did a post-event survey that 95.2% of people said they would recommend this festival to family and friends. We were able to achieve $45,000 in community sponsorship. We get a lot of love from our community. People value what we do here in the small business community specifically. 40% of our artists represented cultures from around the world. 15 artists presented were between the ages of 16 and 24, which a young artist finding work is quite challenging. We were able to introduce a locally grown showcase this year that presented 12 artists from this region, all 24 and under. We presented festival opportunities to 12 other artists from within Northumberland County as well. Through our IDEA committee, we introduced a time and space tent, temporary accessible walkways, seating and shelter, and a chest and breastfeeding station as well. I mentioned earlier that we secured 7 first-time festival sponsors as well. One of the most important things that we were able to do this year was engage our community. We had over 70 volunteers this year. Thanks, Adam. And it should say just under 1,000 volunteer hours, which was a really remarkable achievement for us, especially in time where a lot of organizations like ourselves are really struggling. So that was an increase of almost 50% from 2022. And we were also able to introduce camping this year on the property and sold 40 spaces and 60 tents and 90 people, which is a really great start for something that we believe that can really help our festival grow. And 38% of our attendees, according to the survey, were brand new, which is a really remarkable number as well. Here's some testimonials. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll read a couple, including the last one that says, "This was truly one of the most enjoyable weekends I have had in a very long time. Do not hesitate to go. Next year, I will be begging everyone I know to attend because everyone needs this in their lives." And that's kind of how we feel. And I hope you're able to check this out and read the rest. We received a lot of testimonials after this year's festival. Just a couple of pictures. This was our kids' parade on the final day. Tons and tons of young families enjoying themselves and making art and sharing in it together. Here's another example of Folk Camp from out in Grafton leading a workshop for some kids making some printing on bunting. And just a little night shot of our little food marketplace as well. And that's my son Lewis being tossed in the air when they're doing a little Inuit blanket toss. He hurt himself, but he had lots of fun. And here's a young guy, a teenager, learning actually how to start a fire from scratch. Some really cool life skills that these kids will take with them for forever, and a little trailer ride as well. Our second annual Road to Cultivate free concert series happened this year in Memorial Park. We did 9 weeks. It was really amazing. We had threats of rain every single week, I believe, but we were able to attract some good crowds, typically 200 to 300 people with our peak attendance 2 days of over 500, which was really remarkable. Some of the highlights in my mind were that we partnered with Port Hope Makers Market for 9 pop-up markets featuring a total of over 20 local vendors to really add something to the atmosphere. We had a great partnership with Song, Sounds of the Next Generation, that did a free family drum circle every Thursday before our series. They also put on our Young Artist Showcase as well. We started a Cultivate Kids Day this year. We worked with Lee Higginson from Fluke Craft to create 144 feet of original art that we used to put on display at the festival. And we were able to use the platform as well to raise a couple $1,000 through our weekly raffle, and a total attendance around 3,000 people over the course of the 9 weeks. This is that a piece of that mural, a couple of kids working on it. It was amazing to watch this come to life over the course of 9 weeks. A little bit of the drum circle, particularly the young boys wanted to get in there and mash on drums. And this was our first annual Cultivate Kids Day. Some kids on stage and lots of bubbles and lots of fun. And just a little shot from the stage showing some of the crowds we had over the course of the summer. Hibernate Festival happened in February. We're proud of this festival because it feels like a real effort in bringing the downtown community together. We were able to bring 800 people into 3 shows at the Capitol Theatre and 500 on Saturday afternoon throughout downtown. We partnered with 30 different merchants to do a family scavenger hunt over 3 days. We partnered with 7 different restaurants to do Hibernate Eats, a little restaurant promotion. We transformed 8 shops into venues, including live music and workshop spaces along Mill Street, Walton Street, and John Street, and Ontario Street, for that matter. We hosted free workshops with Juno award-winning artists for kids associated with Sounds of the Next Generation, and kids 18 and under were all free all the time. Here is just a picture of our first show, our kickoff show on the Friday night at the Capitol Theatre. A live art demonstration that happened at Ganaraska Art and Framing. Some arts and crafts with my niece, Dahlia, at Furby House Books. And this was a really nice program that we had going on at Dualissimo that allowed for young artists to come out and share their songs and gave them a real place of belonging. And we turned Poho Boho into an acoustic coffee house as well, featuring local artists. And this is Jacob Daniel. And lastly, our big show at the Capitol Theatre sold out. William Prince, an Indigenous singer-songwriter from Winnipeg, came and shared his songs and stories and his skills in a workshop with a lot of local youth as well. And a really amazing way to kind of cap it all off. And you can see this girl. She is looking longingly at Joy Laps, who is a percussionist teaching a workshop. This girl was never happier in her life. She became, after that, and during the Road to Cultivate concert series, one of our Cultivate Kid volunteers, and showed up every week to do what she could to help by picking up garbage or going around and collecting donations, and just kind of a quick picture of some of the impact we are making with Cultivate Community. 10 minutes, boom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for our delegation? Yes, Councillor Adam.
Thank you. Jeff, thank you. You've done such great things for our town over the course of the many years. I've been so fortunate to be able to come out to like every Road to Cultivate, which was amazing. And then obviously I got out to Cultivate. I do have a suggestion for you for next year. Could you get lighter tents? And just equipment in general? It got a little heavy at the end there. I really do appreciate everything that you've done for the community. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Any other comments? Thank you very much for coming and sharing all of those incredible achievements with the council and with the community. Okay, moving on to our second delegation, Corey Harris.
Madam Mayor, we have to receive it for information.
Oh, yes, we'll receive this for information. Councillor Les, seconded by Councillor Chris, all in favor. Thank you. 3.2. Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority regarding the flood plan mapping update implementation plan. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. So my name is Corey Harris. I'm the Watershed Services Coordinator at the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. So tonight I want to walk through some plans to update our floodplain mapping for the watershed. So I'm not going to go through all the things here in the outline, but I'll jump right in. In terms of some context, mapping of natural hazards is delegated, it's a delegated responsibility from the province to the conservation authorities. This includes 3 pillars of flood management. The first one being prevention, second being protection, and third is emergency response. Prevention is by far the most cost-effective approach to take, and that's really mapping out hazardous areas that will flood in significant events and directing new development to areas that are safe. Floodplain mapping is foundational to understanding the watershed and how it's going to respond to rain events, but it also supports all 3 flood management elements. In 2020, the province released the flooding strategy for Ontario, and I just want to point out that out of the 5 priorities that they presented, number 1 is understanding flood risks. So the work we want to do in updating the mapping for the watershed is in alignment with the province's direction. Some of you may be familiar with changes to the Conservation Authorities Act in recent years. One of those changes was the release of a regulation outlining the mandatory services that conservation authorities are to provide to their municipal partners. And you'll see in the wording here that the regulation directs conservation authorities to delineate and map areas of natural hazards within its area of jurisdiction, to study surface water hydrology and hydraulics, including surface water flows and levels, and also to study the potential effects of climate change on natural hazards. So again, it aligns perfectly with the province's direction. I just want to take a moment to touch on the shoreline hazards in the watershed. In 2018, GRCA partnered with Central Lake Ontario and Lower Trent Conservation Authorities to assess 135 kilometers of shoreline. Let me repeat that, 135 kilometers of shoreline. That was an enormous project. And out of that, 12 reaches were assessed with specific recommendations for each of those reaches. Updated shoreline change rates for erosion were determined using 1954 photos versus 2018 photos. And the study included discussion regarding impacts of climate change on coastal erosion processes. So Port Hope was a contributor to the funding to this project. And if anyone wants to download a copy, it is available on our website via the link displayed there. The hazard mapping for the shoreline looks like this. This is the mouth of the Ganaraska River. The yellow line work is the 100-year flood level. Blue is the flood hazard limit. Red is the erosion hazard limit, and the pink areas are dynamic beach hazards defined under the regulation. So the state of GRCA's mapping, there's quite a cross-section. The color scheme you see here is depicting the relative age. So anything in red is from the 1970s, and we don't have a digital model for that watershed. We do have boxes of punch cards upstairs in the attic for some of our models, which are really of no use to us today. So we have to rebuild those models. Things in green were done in the last few years. So you can see within the region of Durham, we've just completed the Wilmot and Graham watershed updates, and we're currently working on the northwest part of the Ganaraska River and some of the smaller tribs down near the lake. So yeah, some of the stuff's pretty old. Why are floodplain mapping updates important? Models need to be current to reflect changes in land use. That's important to update the models as these changes occur. And conservation authorities provide mapping and the digital supporting models to not only our municipal partners, but their consultants and consultants that represent developers and just folks in the industry. So with these models, those proponents can test the impacts of their development and see what that does to the floodplain. We need to update these models to complete risk assessments for culvert and bridge structures. And what I mean by that is that with an up-to-date model, you can confirm whether a bridge or a culvert floods under a 5-year storm or a 25-year storm or a 50-year storm. That information then feeds into asset management planning for our municipal partners, and helps them prioritize, the replacement and phasing of structure updates. And also, it's really important to have models that are digital so we can test climate change scenarios to make our communities more resilient. Once you have a digital model, you can put any storm you want. I could put the Peterborough storm over Port Hope and see what that does. So there's a lot of utility in having up-to-date models. The funding history for mapping is, it goes back to the 70s. The first program was the Flood Damage Reduction Program. That was a partnership between the feds and the province with input from local agencies. That ran for 20 years, and then in 2015, Public Safety Canada released the National Disaster Mitigation Program. That was a 50-50 funding partnership between the feds and the municipalities. That was phased out in 2022, and it was replaced by the Flood Hazard Identification and Mapping Program, which is also a 50-50 partnership. When you look at kind of the time scale here, you can see the FDRP program from the 70s. It ran for 20 years, and then it ended in 96. So there was a 19-year gap in any federal or provincial funding to get mapping updates done. And so when I'm asked, Corey, why is your mapping so old? I can point to this. Some great news we just got last month was that Natural Resources Canada is extending the funding for the Flood Hazard Identification and Mapping Program through to March of 2028. And that's one of the reasons I'm before you tonight, is to let you know about that, but also to just prioritize, I guess, or express the need for taking advantage of this opportunity. Funding application intakes are expected to open in the coming months, and we're certainly gearing up to be ready for that. So that gives us 4 years to get mapping updates done through the watershed. Another reason we have to update floodplain mapping is that in 2013, Natural Resources Canada released the Canadian Geodetic Vertical Datum of 2013. That's the new standard for Canada. That replaces the old 1928 datum. And so what does that mean? It's most bridge and culvert infrastructure is surveyed in the old 1928 datum. All the new LiDAR data that we use for mapping is in the new datum. So there's a difference of approximately 0.3 to 0.4 meters in those datums. So to do an update to mapping, you're going to affect the accuracy of your floodplain models. So existing bridge and culvert structures need to be resurveyed in the new national datum. And there's a few culverts out there. This is our watershed, and you can see there's about right around 700 structures. We've been busy the last 2 years. We've surveyed just over 400 in the region of Durham, but we want to extend that work and bring it east into Port Hope and the other municipalities. You've probably heard about LiDAR. It's a short form for light detection and ranging. It's a remote sensing product where a plane flies over an area and measures the ground surface with lasers. You get some really cool stuff out of this. We can take that point cloud data that comes from the LiDAR vendor and then process that in-house to make a high-resolution digital terrain model, and that's used to do the mapping. So the purpose of us doing the implementation plan for mapping updates, the document really provides an approach to guide us in those mapping updates. It identifies a framework and applicable guidelines that we need to follow. It provides a strategy by reviewing and ranking all watercourse systems in the watershed to identify priorities. It outlines available funding sources, and we've developed a preliminary schedule. Thanks. We've ranked each of the watercourses for age of hydrology and hydraulic models as well as mapping. We've also ranked risk levels for each system. We've put all that together in this formula, and we've produced a prioritization matrix. So you can see we've ranked every watercourse in terms of need to get updated. So Port Hope, the watercourses in Port Hope are shown in red, and the other municipalities are different colors. So next steps, we want to meet with municipal partners to establish their priorities for mapping updates. confirm available funding that might be available to leverage those federal dollars. We're in the process of developing and finalizing work plans and cost estimates for all creek systems. And we're looking at phasing that work over the next 4 years to get all watersheds done if possible. One thing that we're recommending to municipal partners is to consider allocating funds to municipal reserves such that those local dollars can be leveraged to obtain federal funding. Part of the reason for that is that the intakes for applications don't really respect the municipal budget cycles. So when we have to find a partner in matching funding, it's really difficult to wait a year to know whether we can fit that into a budget. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? I'm going to start with Councillor Les, and then I know you've got a few, Councillor Mink. So
just a quick question, Corey. Thank you for your presentation. The hazard of the Ganaraska River is quite high. It's 4. In practical sense, how safe are we with that hazard level?
That's a tough question, Les. Thank you for that. Overall, I think the community is pretty safe. Like, we've had mapping for the Ganaraska River for some time, but like I say, it is out of date and needs to be updated. Certainly the downtown part of Port Hope, I would say it's a 3 or 4, just given that under a Hurricane Hazel event, there will be significant flooding, and we did see that in 1980. But for the rural areas, it's less so. It's really affecting bridge and culvert infrastructure, and there are some buildings and structures that flood, but the downtown is certainly the highest risk area.
Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So through the chair, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. So for those of you who do not know, I've had the privilege of sitting on the board with the GRCA for 5 years now, and I just want to thank you for the hard work you do. We're very aware of our Ganaraska Forest and the Ganaraska River, but what we often forget about is that we're sitting on the Ganaraska watershed. Every single one of us, every night and day. This is where we live. So I have a lot of confidence in what you've brought to us. So thank you. So when I'm looking at this matrix, I'm seeing, if we can flip back to that presentation, that slide, that one. So the pink areas, these are Port Hope areas, is that correct?
That's correct.
So according to this matrix, Wesleyville Creek and West Gages Creek, is that just over by Peacock, sort of? Is that where that is?
Yeah, West Gages Creek is over near Peacock.
So those are the 2 areas in Port Hope with the highest score that would be prioritized, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So my other question, so we have just passed a notice of motion to talk about a watershed study for the Wesleyville area, potentially funding that. That's only discussion at this point. What is priority, the floodplain mapping or that, or do they go together?
Well, lots of tough questions tonight. So through you, Chair, I would say they're both important. They are different, but I think getting the mapping updated and taking advantage of the window of the federal funding is probably the priority. I would recommend, however, just looking at least going down the road of sub-watershed study planning, just because that is a very effective way to prepare an area for development in a very holistic way. So yeah, I would lean towards the floodplain mapping.
Okay, thank you. And one more comment, and this is more to my council, but so we know, I'm just going to take my glasses, I have a few points I made here. We know that development is coming this way. We've seen it as we drive along the 401. So we have opportunity to resist development or try to fight it, or we can be prepared and start planning and rather than just sit and wait. So we know watershed studies are important. We know floodplain mapping has to happen. We're next in line after Durham Region, where this is starting to crawl. So and I know this is very common in Clarington, next door to us. And they have participation from the region of Durham as well in some of this. So I'm just I'm thinking, and I'd like to propose this to my council, that this is an emotion, just something to think about, that we potentially host other municipalities in Northumberland as well as the county as well to come here and learn more about this, where we can collectively start making a plan for floodplain mapping, watershed studies. Water doesn't know boundaries, it crosses over. So I think this is something that we could really invest into and have better planning rather than being in a position of reacting.
Thank you, Councillor Mink. That's a really terrific idea and something I think we can bring forward for more than just information, but maybe for some action. And I think that would be a terrific opportunity to connect with surrounding municipalities on some common challenges. Any other questions or comments? So, Councillor Mink, would you like to actually put this forward as an action item as opposed to just accepting this presentation for information?
Potentially, I'm not sure how I would do that though. If we would want to have an information session that would be open to the public, of course, as well, but invite neighboring municipalities as well as the county about this topic. I don't know how that would proceed. Or if that's something that we could just take away and talk about later. Okay.
Okay, we will, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept this for information with the caveat that we will discuss this at a later date. Thank you very much. And so can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Chris, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Thank you. Now we'll move on to our last delegation for the evening. Freya Jorgensen, verbal presentation regarding barriers currently in place for supporting citizens trying to establish a farm, including one growing cannabis. Welcome, Freya.
Members of Council, thank you for allowing me to speak before you tonight. My name is Freya Jorgensen, along with my mother. We live in the Port Britain region of Ward 2, and as the Mayor acknowledged, I'd like to start a farm. Currently, we have about 4 acres, 2 mixed-use barns, and my vision is to use a cannabis micro-cultivation license as the cash crop with additional goods produced, such as apiary, field crops. With the plans I've developed for the property, I can ensure an abundance of food to be produced, little to no change in the property's consumption of groundwater, and a secure operation that goes beyond the federal requirements for cannabis micro-cultivation. I'd like to bring your attention for a moment to a report that the municipality produced on August 2nd as part of the Council of Whole meeting titled The Vision and Mission for the Economic Development Strategic Plan. It lays out a mission to work collaboratively to foster business investment, grow key industries, encourage new entrepreneurs, and attract workforce talent while honoring our heritage and leveraging our community image. It goes on to identify sector development, supportive planning policies and processes, and leveraging post-secondary education among the 8 strategic priorities. It also summarizes the state of agriculture in the region, with 1/3 of the province's chicks being hatched here, about 29,000 acres of mixed-use farming, and an average age of 54 for most farmers with no or few succession plans for their land. When I first reached out to planning 2 years ago, I was met with a blanket no for starting a farm. I was informed that even attempting a rezoning at the time would be unlikely to be approved given the bylaws. This was the first time the planning department has discouraged my efforts, and to the point at which I began to follow the bylaw review process that culminated this summer, during which I submitted several letters to the municipality through the online portal and direct email to Theodora. Unfamiliar with municipal processes, I believe this would be a good way to detail my comments, concerns, suggestions, and offer my help to aid in the process in relation to cannabis. None of these correspondences were included in any of the council meetings or agenda or minutes going back to April 2022 for any of the council meetings, council of the whole, special, or public meetings. Despite my concerns regarding the now adopted changes going unheard, I expressed how I felt to Councillor Collins. And I was even very pleased to be offered a meeting with the planning department with Councillor Collins as my advocate. However, the takeaways I took from that meeting are this. It'll cost $350 just to speak to the planning department about what I want to do. A further $3,700 to apply for the rezoning, whether it's successful or not. As a landowner in this municipality, I'm not allowed to represent myself to the planning department. Any application I make that isn't prepared by a registered land use planner would automatically be rejected, regardless of my own professional qualifications. The process takes between 1 to 2 years, assuming no appeals, and could fail on the merit of negative feelings towards cannabis expressed by members of the community. That no property in the municipality less than 800 acres can meet the criteria considered for a farm, a point that has been refuted by the Ontario Ministry of Agricultural, Farming and Rural Affairs. If I was interested in severing our property, however, to make some money, I could help with a quota of land severances, I was told, and that then I would have the funds to rent land from people in the north end of the municipality that I could be connected with. A key element of my vision, then, however, relies on the unique biodiversity of my home. It may be possible to run a successful farm elsewhere, but I've put my degree in biology from TMU to best use to make sure that the operations are self-sustaining. If I was going to run a business through local loopholes in local bylaws, I could have done so years ago by producing THC through fermentation. But the idea is to curb illegal sales, as was the point of legalization. I would love to say I'm in a position to easily risk the application fees right now. In my efforts to secure funding for our farm, every one of the major banks has turned me away at the mention of cannabis. Careers in the region for someone with a biology degree are very few. Since graduating several years ago, the only job that has been interested in my skills later decided they didn't like an out and proud queer woman working for them. As such, I've been on EI since February. By the time I cover my bills, medications, and food, I have maybe $40 a week to save, meaning it will take a little over 8 years before I can afford the rezoning application. I haven't managed to find a land use planner either, because none will work with cannabis, and the few that are willing to work in the region are not aware of the most recent zoning bylaw updates. When I mention cannabis to them, it's a blanket no, as they still assume our old bylaws. Members of council, the process is biased by virtue of its design and the lack of assistance for those struggling financially. I'm fortunate to split ownership of the land with my mother, while the majority of my generation struggles to find and afford housing. At a time when it's harder than ever to find and retain skilled talent, I've taken an emergent section of the cannabis market and made it a viable option on this scale. Using modern techniques, I can grow crops at a greater efficiency than standard soil farming. The day is coming when farmers in the region will begin to age out of being fit enough to care for their operations, opening the door for corporations to acquire the land. I'm asking the municipality to put action to promise and support local rural economic development by removing or lessening these barriers to entry, not to avoid fees or due process, but to work collaboratively with your constituents, giving them an equal chance to prosper where equity lacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Freya. And I'm really pleased that you took up the suggestion to come and do this delegation to council. Any questions or comments from Freya from around the table? Councillor Collins?
No, at the end of the day, I commend your courage. Thank you. There's always room for improvement. As I said, we have met and we've discussed several times. We're not done. Obviously, there's still work with that. It's absolutely cause some reflection with that, and we'll go forth and continue to see what we can do.
Any other comments or questions? I would echo Councillor Collins. I think you're providing some very important information and reflections about financial barriers in particular, and I think it's something that this council will definitely take back and discuss. So thank you very much. I'd like to put forward the motion to accept this delegation for information. Councillor Les, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you very much. Moving on to our consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered collectively as one motion. Council members may request that specific items be removed for separate discussion, deliberation, and action. Would anyone like to remove any of the items listed under item 4 for further consideration? Seeing none. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder then to receive for information the consent agenda. Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you. And as we move into our regular standing committees, as I had mentioned earlier, we're going to start with planning and development. So I turn it over to Deputy Mayor Attridge.
Great, thanks very much. And I'm going to change the order of planning and development. So if you're following along in the agenda, we're going to start with 7.2, which is new business and the notice of motion regarding sleeping cabin. And Councillor Clare.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Todd. The notice of motion is a continuation of the discussion we had here at our last council meeting based on the contents of a staff report that we received for information and that was commissioned by this council in January 2023. At our last meeting, as is noted in the meeting minutes, I suggested that I would ask for support this evening to address the question of this notice of motion without the usual 2-week waiting period on the basis that this is not new business, but rather a continuation of a public discussion that we were having at this table 3 weeks ago, and a continuation of business that has been on this council's agenda since December 2022. I agreed with encouragement from members of council to take the 3 weeks since our last council meeting to convene with our Director of Planning and with Greenwood Coalition and the volunteers leading the Sleeping Cabin project in order to inform the details and the wording of the motion, addressing the remaining questions in the staff report after 7 months of work on this file by staff, and the request from staff that any motion should identify which of the 4 properties that were discussed in the staff report we would like to move forward for a potential pilot project. This is what I have done with support from Councillor Todd. That said, I recognize that not everybody follows the exciting world of council deliberations. It's very nice to see such a big crowd in the house today, but normally there's very few people here with us in chambers. So based on that, and after conferring with some colleagues and following the lively community conversation to date, I believe that it's very important that the process that we use for deliberating on this issue must be beyond any possible confusion or reproach, such that we can avoid distraction and be able to focus our discussion on the merits of the motion itself and give the proposed action fair consideration. As such, I believe that we should adhere to the usual process outlined in our current soon to be updated procedural bylaw and wait until November 21st to discuss the motion per our normal notice period. I would like to apologize for all of you who are here this evening in hopes of having more questions answered and to observe our deliberation. I very much hope that you will continue to engage with members of council in the coming weeks and that you will join us here in council chambers again on the 21st.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm gonna address that, but if that's okay by the chair. So I think it has been, I do hear you. And I was, as I noted, prepared to put forward a motion for us to discuss that tonight. But I have also heard from many members of the public that they have concerns about that process. And I have heard from colleagues at this table that they would not be comfortable moving forward and wanted to make sure that every member of the public has an opportunity to be part of the discussion, including those that read that fine print on the agenda and therefore have not come down to chambers tonight because they expect we will talk about it in 2 weeks.
Right. Thank you very much. So this motion has been included on the agenda in order to provide notice of motion to the public. In accordance with the procedural bylaw, it will be automatically put over to the next meeting. This motion will be considered at the November 21st meeting of the Committee of the Whole. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you, Erica. Erica, I hear you.
You don't, because you're putting it over. Every one of the people in this room and the people that have left and the people in this hallway have taken time out of their day, got their kids out of school, taken time off work to be here. So the only fair thing to do was respectfully listen to us and carry over your conversation with what you've heard tonight and add that to what's to come in future meetings.
So
don't waste our time.
So I hear you and I appreciate what you're saying. Sorry, excuse me. So folks, just to be clear, okay.
This isn't transparent if you shut us down tonight. You preach transparency and then you shut us out. You have a due diligence and responsibility to your constituents. To hear us all tonight and hear you because I hear you and I respect what you're saying. To be fair for everybody else, and I agree, you should be fair to everybody else. But you also have a due diligence and a responsibility to the people that showed up tonight.
We may end up. So if I can just finish what I'm saying. Erica, I hear what you're saying and I appreciate it. There was no guarantee that this issue would be discussed tonight. Erica, please. Erica, please. The way in which the procedures go is that all notice of motions are by default carried over. There is always the chance that we can ask to have it suspended. That request, Sir, hang on. In the event that that is even put forward, it still has to go through a vote of council and 2/3 of council has to agree to it. So even then it's not necessarily guaranteed. What is guaranteed when a notice of motion comes forward is that in 2 weeks' time, it will be spoken to. And yeah, of course. Sure.
People are passionate about this and
yes.
they want to be heard. You have a responsibility as our paid employees to listen to us. There is nothing wrong with listening to what we have to say, taking that into consideration and adding that to further discussions moving forward.
Right.
You're actually insulting us by saying, oh, it wasn't guaranteed, because you're saying you don't care about your constituents' time or their families.
So you can still do two things. One, what I would encourage all citizens to do is to have your voice heard, is that you can write in, and the best place to write into, whoa, folks, okay. So, okay, hang tight. We still, Okay,
In respect, when management's right, you tell us, you give us a wishy-washy answer saying either tonight or in 3 weeks. I have a response from you guys, because I did write it.
okay, so,
You know what, it's just disgusting that you're gonna sit here and tell a room full of people that's been here for 2.5 hours that their time doesn't matter. If you had no intentions of listening to us, you should have told us at 6:30, we all would have
okay,
gone home.
folks,
You just wasted our time, it's disrespectful.
okay, so, we could continue this into the evening, or you can let me finish. The second part of this is we have question period at the end of this session, and you are more than welcome to come up and ask questions. But just to be clear, the procedure, and I respect the fact that there's a lot of people who took time out to be here this evening. You don't have to go home, you can stay. And I am inviting you to stay, and at question period, you're welcome to do that. There are also people who did not take tonight because they're expecting it for the 21st. So we have lots of constituents.
People are expecting the 27th, have it on the 27th, carry on with today and take your
It's 21st.
from today and use that to further your deliberations on the 27th.
Okay.
Take everything that people have to say into consideration. Instead of shoving it through blanket thing saying, oh, well, it's never here to see. Because you had Dave and Sarah up here first. Told them, oh, you're gonna have to wait, and they respectfully held their questions. And now, for what? You're not even gonna listen to us and answer the questions?
Right, because the next question period will come up and you will absolutely be able to ask those questions. You absolutely will. So they are respected the process. We appreciate that. This is the end of this new business. We are moving on to item 7.1. You're certainly welcome to stay for question period and be heard. If you do not want to stay for question period and you still want to be heard, please write at clerk@porthope.ca. Whether you are for or against this, you can be heard. If you have specific questions to any councillor, please reach out. Erica, we have question period at the end. That's over to you.
I'm going to take back the chair of the meeting, and I will change the agenda, and we will have questions right now. So anybody who has any questions, please come forward to the microphone, and I will start with, yes.
So again, we feel as representatives of the hamlet of Welcome that we're being slightly forced to this. This is not our respect toward the council, but now it's our response. So
we do appreciate the time, and we understand that there is procedures. That being said, it seems that people in our community are very passionate as we are. So, you know, some of our questions, I guess we'll bring them forth, and we respect if you don't have answers today, but when we do move forward next week, or in 2 weeks, I guess on the 21st, I will make sure that I am in attendance. And if anybody would like to join me, that would be great. I just want to state that I have personally lived on County Road 10 since 1989. My parents bought the house there, and my husband and I now actually live about 4 doors up from that location. Most of these people in attendance I do know and have known. They've actually watched me grow up. So I get that this is question period, but I will get to that and we'll go from there. So yeah, we've done a lot of research since Thursday and a lot of reading. So that's where our questions are based from. We're basing them on fact. I'll let Dan go.
So first and foremostly, we want to respect and understand, we want it to be public knowledge that we are in favor for helping those who are in need, who require a safe space. And in our research and chatting with our community members, we have been able to come up with many questions on our own and taken the time to put out the emails to ask the majority behind us to come up with some conclusions and questions of their own, and that we would be representatives of the community in the hamlet of Welcome and the surrounding areas, and including Ward 2 and the stretches and the bounds of that. So we'll put question to council if you're okay with that. Again, we understand the due processes, and we would have done this in 2 weeks' time, but we'll do it now as well. Question 1, we understand from our research that the location of the school has been put forth as it is a private and secluded area, and it was preferred location of the seniors that are in question. That would be potentially placed in this location. Our question to council is the location a truly safe location for their needs, considering the facts including the lack of lighting, wildlife concerns, response time for emergency services, a lack of nearby amenities if vehicles are not available, and we understand that in some circumstances they could be. A lack of infrastructure such as sidewalk certifying that current well water is potable, portable electric hookups to the units. In reading through our all of the NCSS and Greenwood Coalition presentations from December 6th and current fact documents that have posted to social media, mostly Facebook, it has been stated that the individuals that are being offered the sleeping cabins, to the knowledge of the organizations, there's no awareness of drug dependency and or mental health issues. And it is stated that even if they're aware of these issues, it would not preclude them from this pilot project. We would like to note that in a 525-foot radius, there are just under 20 young children living in this area in permanent surroundings. We ask, how would you protect these young individuals who are or will be exposed to the potential unsafe, unstable, and unknown conditions that could and may arise? In our research of the Kingston sleep cabins, the recent report of the City of Kingston that is to be reviewed on their November 7th, 2023 meeting, the report indicates that there is an annual carrying cost of $336,000 per year. We respect that this is the proposed pilot is on a smaller scale. However, it still comes with certain level of financing that needs to be kept sustainable. Question to the council. We ask, has this project been completely funded at this point with a surplus in the account for any unforeseen expenses? In following up to that question, we ask, what happens if donations and fundings fall short? Who will then become the responsible? Does this get passed down to the taxpayers through the municipality? I'll let Sarah continue.
We won't bombard you. We do have 37 questions. I mean, it was a lot. We won't do them all. A couple of the important ones. We've noted that as per the facts, right, that NSCC and Greenwood Coalition has put out, it's been advised that the initial occupants currently have their own vehicles. As per provincial ministry government law, we all have to have valid driver's license, insurance, and our vehicles safety inspected every year or not every year, but on the road, right? So we ask, has it been verified that these licenses are current, insurance is up to date, and confirmed that the vehicles are up to provincial ministry safety standards? And in follow-up to that, if they're not, are we allowing these individuals to continue to operate their vehicles on our municipality roads without their legal laws in place?
That's a big assumption to be making about people who don't know that they don't have proper.
I'm sorry, but I'm not making any assumption about anybody. I'm stating a fact that anybody has to have.
Okay, I'd like to ask that we bring order back in, please.
We're not here to speculate. We're here to cover the actual the factual documentation. I am, as a citizen of this municipality, required to operate a safe vehicle with the licensing and the insurance abilities. And it has been noted through conversations with different organizations that receive homeless that a lot of the times it is stated, and it is second nature, it is second news, that they are operating these vehicles without these proper procurements because they can simply not afford it.
Thank you. We've noted the question. Do you want to continue with your others?
So when it comes to the matter of policing, currently it's OPP who oversees the county, right? 32 County Road 10. And we ask that based on that, these police officers are coming out of Coburg. They monitor the 401 and they also look after the County of Northumberland. So the response times are actually dependent on the prioritization of their emergencies that actually occur. So what police source should or would be responsible to that area for fast knowledge, like fast accessory, right?
So our seventh question, as per the NSCC facts document, that the question was raised if there would be an effect on the housing value of the bordering homes. It states there would be no such effect on the values of the home in this statement. And this statement is from a study from 2018. Or sorry, 2008, 15 years ago roughly, which is outdated and the housing market is ever evolving. In conducting recent conversations with our local realtors, lending partners, and appraisal companies, due to the transparency declarations that are new coming forth, it must be stated when we're selling our homes. It has been stated that this will, in fact, have a negative effect on our home values. Question we asked of the council. How will the municipality or organizations offer compensation if there is a loss in this event? Next question is, as with any home or business, there is always a factor of damage or loss or injury, which could include death that could happen on our own properties that we as owners and tenants must be responsible for. Our question to the council. If there's damages, losses, or a fatality in these sleeping cabins or this site, who would bear the responsibility or the liability in the event of a lawsuit? Who would hold the liability insurance policy to protect all parties of the innocent involved, both sides? We've got two more questions and then we'll... we respect the pilot project and its intent for 4 sleeping cabins, which will house seniors as stated in the NCSS fact document that was put out. It indicates that if the project is a success, then this could include housing to address more diverse and challenging needs. If this pilot project were to continue after the 6-month trial and include more diverse and challenging cases, we ask what extra measures would be put in place as it grows to accommodate it, maybe a difference in population, and keep our young children protected in a manner that does not affect their daily living routines as current. And lastly, I'll leave it at number 10, or I'm sorry, I'll do one more that is quite important to us. In reading the municipal staffing report PD 0323 that came after January 24th, 2023 meeting, it states the NSCC identified 3 potential properties owned by the municipality that they felt should be considered to host a pilot project. Now, I was a little blindsided because something came up earlier about one of the sites, and I don't know if there's a sale happening or not, but the addresses were the 81 Mill Street South, the 95 Mill Street South, and 3200 County Road 10. I might have that address wrong from earlier. Furthermore, it is stated that currently there are no properties in the view of the staff of the municipality that would be suitable for this pilot and its nature. Our question, as per the report, was consideration put into the recommendation to look at current parkland properties or a site with current municipal facilities that the pilot project could be utilized on if the project was moved forward. And based on that, I'll let Sarah conclude, but I'll just add to myself, I do want to thank you for listening to our questions. We have many more, and I would like to supply the clerk with these documents, and we will be here in 2 more weeks. And if you want to hear some more questions and we're allowed to, we will filter more of them through you.
So in closing, we know that the motion is to change the zoning bylaw, and essentially the municipality is just lending the land to this organization. I believe in all the research that I have done in the last 96 hours, that at a municipality level, there is the word I'm looking for is a responsibility, right? In placing these types of housing, the support in place to making sure that if it is something that is going to move forward anywhere in the municipality, that it is done in such a safe and efficient manner. I mean, we are all quite aware of what is happening in Cobourg at this point in time. I have friends that live close by to that, and the stories they have told me are quite scary. You know, so with all respect to the organizations, I think it's great that you are trying to help individuals, but I think that there's a bit more planning that needs to go into that.
Not only on the municipal level, but put it back to the county.
The county, everybody. And in closing, I just want to say that in all that research I did, there is Medicine Hat, Alberta, that has actually eradicated chronic homelessness completely. In 2009, they put a plan in place, and it was a 5-year plan working with their existing levels. Maybe we could kind of look to see what they've done as well. So, but thank you again. We're sorry for the ruckus.
Thank you for those questions. And I know there's quite a few and quite a few more, but I'm going to direct them to, not sure if we have time to take care of all of them, but Councillor Clare.
So I'm going to be careful because, of course, we are not discussing the motion today per our normal procedural bylaw, but I would like to address some of those questions. And just to say, I really appreciate you bringing them forward, and I look forward to seeing the full set. I've made offers already to you both directly, but as well as to many of your neighbors, anyone who commented on Facebook with my phone number and email, because I really do want to hear these questions and we can come prepared to answer them as part of the discussion on the 21st. I would point to the staff report that you referred to as some of your questions is the preliminary report that we received in January, on January 24th, sorry. After receiving that report from staff, council did provide further direction to staff to go back and meet with them. So there was an updated report provided to us 3 weeks ago that we reviewed that outlined 4 potential feasible sites, with each with a few questions remaining about whether potential barriers to feasibility. The property
services, sorry, not a question, but lots of other people have had the opportunity to make statements, so we will as well. That we have been told by case managers who work for the county that they are out of motel funding. So to promise motel funding to get out of actually taking action. These seniors deserve housing and choices. We don't want them to be in cabins, but we also don't want them to die. So what are you going to do if someone dies? And what are you going to do if there's an encampment here?
Those are very good questions. Thank you for asking them. We have not yet had a chance to have a fulsome conversation about this because we haven't had a fulsome conversation about this motion either. So we're making note of this, and that will be part of our conversation. Yes, next question, please. And again, I should have mentioned name and address, please.
Yeah, Erica, Northumberland County. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask the questions respectfully. I can appreciate you're not going to have the answers because you want to delay it till the 27th. Or excuse me, the 21st. Unlike what the gentleman said sooner about he saw that this was pointless, I think that's a great opportunity to hear us and get those thinking caps on and start coming up with alternative solutions. I'm going to start out by reading something before I ask my question for context. April 21st, 2022, CBC newspaper, headline, Sleeping Cabins for Kingston's Homeless Falls Short, Critics Say. Kingston is shutting down its sleeping home project for a host of reasons, In the final analysis, here's their pilot assessment. Quote, critics of the pilot project, which was run by a nonprofit group called Our Livable Solutions, say it's bad use of tax dollars and donations, and the money could have been better spent on shelter beds or permanent housing. The full story, again, can be found on CBC Ottawa. The headline is called Sleeping Cabins for Kingston's Homeless Fall Short, Critics Say, and it was penned by Michelle Allen, April 21st, 2022. And in this article, it goes on to describe that they had 10 houses, 10 tiny homes at a cost of $185,000 to build. They ran the program from January through April before they shut it down. So my question is, don't interrupt me, please. Everybody, it is
Sorry,
shut down. It is shut down.
We have order and there's somebody at the podium.
So my question is, council budgeted $407,000 for the program. They also had a local woman who generously donated additional $100,000 to United Way. Since they've shut it down, they had $250,000 left over, which they used to help those residents transition. In our economy, where we're seeing record numbers at food banks and people in our community choosing between heat and food on the table, I want to pose the question to council, is this the best use of our taxpayers funded money that you have received from your ratepayers? I agree, a permanent solution needs to happen. It's something, we have a systemic problem, and this isn't the first time, and it's probably not going to be the last. But I'm here to ask the question, to implore you guys to think about long-term sustainable solutions. Kingston has already had this fail, and they've already said that the money would have been better spent on shelter beds or permanent housing. So I wanted to ask, what other solutions have you guys considered for long-term permanent solutions than these temporary housing structures, which in fairness is a temporary bylaw to amend the land use, but again, with all of the complex equations like safety of children and safety of residences and liability. So I just want to know if there's anything else being considered, especially knowing that our neighbors to the east and other townships besides Kingston, I can pull up a lot more, but I just wanted to be respectful of the council's time. So that's why I stuck with Kingston.
Thank you for your question. And I think just the short answer to it is absolutely. This council has been considering a whole host of options, both immediate, emergency, and long-term and sustainable. So we haven't only focused on one thing. We focused on a whole host of things because we understand that we are in a crisis, and we have committed as a council to seeing and to committing to housing as a human right. That is part of the record of this council. So there have been a whole host of options that are on the table. I think that we are also challenged by the fact that we have a staff that has so many hours and so many resources to wade through all of the different options. We have also gotten clear messaging that we need to prioritize which of the options we are going to be moving forward with, and that is the reality of the resources and the time of our municipal staff. We have not yet, as a council, had an opportunity to look at all the different options together and decide which ones we're going to prioritize. Speaking for myself, I will prioritize those that show clear evidence that they work. Councillor Claire.
Hi, Erica. Good to see you.
Hi, Claire. Good to see you again.
Thanks for your questions. I just wanted to address a couple quickly. First of all, this council is not considering any municipal funding for this project. This is a municipal, we may consider through the notice of motion the use of a piece of municipal property, but this is not being funded by tax dollars, unlike the project that you reference in Kingston. So I can assure you on that front. I thank you for raising the question of Kingston. I'm certainly following that case study very closely, and I'm following that. I would note that it's not quite the fait accompli that that article maybe suggests. So yes, critics have raised questions. Critics often raise questions about projects, and then you go and look at them. A decision has not yet been made in Kingston. I would also like to point out, though, for those that are interested, I think it's important to look at the breadth of case studies that are available around this particular model. Kitchener is a fantastic case study and a very successful one. Bradford West Gwillimbury, another lower tier small municipality like ours, is moving forward with this. Peterborough is putting in 250 cabin communities, one funded by tax dollars and one through a social service agency. So there are other case studies, and I applaud you for looking into those, because it is important for us to learn from best practices and what not to do in terms of where things have been tested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I think we have to consider the source for that. If you say it's not finished, they claim it is, but I just have a follow-up question for the mayor, actually. So in regards to, I understand what you said between your answer and what Claire said in regards to the funding, but respectfully, I appreciate, and I've heard what you've said about the 4 individuals getting an immediate contact with, a caseworker and stuff like that. But realistically, we all know there's more than just 4 seniors or 4 other individuals that aren't seniors. So again, I would like to know, prior to our next meeting date, will long-term solutions be proposed where our ratepayers can go and read up on that before the next meeting?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if that's going to be possible. I can give you some additional information, though, about your last question, and that is currently the by name list that the county has 80 folks on that list. Over a 10-year period of time, Port Hope has occupied about 13% of that list, which equals about 10 folks on that list. Now, I want to be clear that that list does not include, of course, folks that are sleeping rough. It does not include folks that are couch surfing, that are in campers, that are in temporary motels or in cars or in shelters. So you're right. The numbers are much higher than on the by name list. Do we know exactly the numbers for the community? We don't have the exact numbers, but we know that they're much larger than the by name list, which we can estimate based on trends that there are 10 in the Port Hope area. Going back to your question about evidence and what works and what doesn't, and to Councillor Claire's point, just the other day, I was in touch with a team of researchers at Western University, led by Carrie-Ann Marshall, a team of 8 researchers that just completed the first international scoping review looking at both tiny homes and sleeping cabins. A scoping review is when you look at all the case studies, all the evidence, everything that's been written on an issue. They identified 74 articles tackling this issue. And their conclusion definitively is that none of the included studies demonstrated evidence of the effectiveness of tiny homes or sleeping cabins over time or in comparison to other approaches like shelters, transition housing, permanent housing, encampments, or other living conditions on health, psychological, or housing outcomes. And they also noted that there's a huge confusion that's out there between sleeping cabins and tiny homes. So this is the first definitive international scoping review of all of the evidence, and I just present that as information.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think they kind of answered our own problems within that statement that you just gave. So with that said, then, will that study also be available for ratepayers to review somewhere? Will you put it up on your mayor's corners?
I definitely will share the information widely.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And with that said, I'll just add, with them saying that it definitely doesn't change anything, I think that like I said, it answers your own question, and we need to be looking at permanent solutions as a council, maybe. And this is just a hypothetical situation, but you look at rentals where we have geared income and market rent. As a council, again, I'm not sure, but I'll just put it out there. Maybe it's something as a council you guys can vote and veto out, that whatever complex has so many percent, and out of that percent, you know, you reserve a set amount of percentage of those units just for homeless people, and not just people on the list for geared income. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Alistair McKeating. I live on White Drive in Port Hope. If you look at the map, my house on White Drive in Port Hope is closer to George Hamilton than the vast majority of residents in Ward 2. I appreciate there's a different situation for the people in Welcome. Look at the map. I am 2 kilometers
Sorry,
away.
I'd like to ask for order, and please let the speaker ask the question.
So where I am going with that is everyone wants a solution to the homeless. We have a proposal that came up that said, how about George Hamilton? It seems relatively isolated. It's not in the midst of a huge population, and we have quite a passionate turnout saying not here. So whether directed to the people who are saying not here or to the council, anybody saying we are committed to a solution, what is your approach to providing, to positioning or situating something, knowing that wherever you go, you're going to have a passionate response like this? How are we ever going to provide solutions to the homeless when the predictable reaction is like this? Not criticizing you. I'm just saying that it's incompatible with somebody putting something somewhere.
I think that's an excellent question, and probably the key question for this community. Whether we're talking about immediate solutions, whether we're talking about emergency responses, or whether it comes to actually putting forward permanent solutions for this community where there's going to be a potential for mixed housing and folks to be housed in those new buildings. Are we going to have a community that supports those permanent solutions if the temporary ones have this kind of response? So I appreciate the question, and it's something that we'll be taking forward to consider at this council table.
Second question, for people who are saying that, and I've been responding to hundreds of posts on Facebook over the last 96 hours. Some people say this is, why are we just doing something for 6 months? It's not viable. We need a long-term solution. Some people, and then we respond and say, well, we can adapt this to accommodate a long-term solution. And they say, now you're looking at sticking this down our throats forever and ever. It seems like we can't win. So whether directed to the people who are now going to go back and think about questions for the next meeting, and also to council, how do you reconcile the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation of whether it's size, residence, where? It seems as though people don't want solutions to homelessness, no matter what the solution is. How do you reconcile that?
Thank you for that question. I would respectfully beg to differ. I think that we've got a lot of folks in this community that are saying we are actually very concerned with homelessness, that we see it around us, we see it in our communities, and we do want to see solutions. I think that the question that you're posing about, you know, how do we deal with the different contours of the different sides of this issue, that is something that's going to be in front of this council to consider and to debate, and to also listen to the voices of the community, as well as to look at you know, what we know is going to work and where our resources, our scarce resources, are going to be best spent.
Okay, next question. People are saying, people especially from Welcome are saying, we don't want these homeless people in Welcome. They should have different solutions. are the people aware, I'm sure they must be, but I'm not sure if it's occurred to them, that if the homeless are to be housed in motels, that the most likely motel is the Budget Inn in Welcome, which is probably 300 meters further away from the community than George Hamilton School is. I don't understand how they can support and how council can propose a solution that is effectively in the same area as the sleeping cabins are proposed. I guess that was more of a statement than a question, but how do you reconcile again proposing that people be housed in the Budget Inn when you don't want to support people in George Hamilton, which is a few hundred meters away?
I'm going to only answer by that by saying that the county has put forward this as an immediate option, and they've talked about the fact that folks that would be housed in whatever motel situation, should that be deemed appropriate, depending on a needs assessment to determine acuity needs. Some folks are not suited yet to be in motels. They're not there. They have very complex needs, and that's just not going to work. A case worker determines the needs, and then they determine where they place folks. We're not in the business of determining where county provides those services, only to say that the county has provided this option, and the option comes with the wraparound services as well as entering into a system and being supported to find permanent housing. That was what was offered in the county update that I shared today.
I think Jenny has already commented on that, so I won't comment further. One of the questions that was asked by the group was, what will the impact be on our property values? Mayor Cleveland was on the radio a day or two ago saying that his stated goal is to reduce the price of housing in Northumberland, to reduce the value of housing in Northumberland by increasing supply. If we solve the housing supply problem, that will inevitably reduce the cost of everybody's home, mine included. How do we? Why is the supposed, or what is the hypothetical risk of putting 4 sleeping cabins on the back 40 of a school considered a risk to housing values across the county, whereas building housing for a couple of hundred unhoused people and a number of other underhoused people, that will inevitably have a dampening effect on housing, and that's probably a good thing for the well-being of the community. It seems like you're picking in sleeping cabins and saying that's the trigger, when in fact the goal is to have more supply and hence lower prices.
I don't comment. Can we, sir, if you'd like to ask a question, I would really welcome you to come up to the podium. I'm not going to comment on anything that Mayor Cleveland talked about, and I think that again, this is a great question for us to reflect on as council.
Last question. The perceived risk that somehow someone is unhoused is a child molester or a murderer or something. I'm not aware of, when I moved to Port Hope, I don't believe anybody did a police check on me. Why is someone who is homeless presumed to be a petty criminal when they have been a productive member of this country for 60 years?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's a really important one, and I think this is all part of raising awareness and reducing stigmatization.
Thank you.
So Claire.
Yeah, I guess as a sort of a point of order. So normally in question period, there's an opportunity for members of council to ask questions as well. Is that in order at this moment, or will that be held to after the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, let me ask the clerk for that.
Usually, question period does happen where council has an opportunity to ask questions first, followed by media, and then by the members of the public. But in this case, subject to the ruling of the chair, following submissions by council, by the members of the public, the chair can determine whether council members will be able to do so.
Yes, and I think I was quite eager to ensure that people's voices were heard, but I think we can certainly pause now and take some questions and comments from around the table.
Thank you. I appreciate there's been a lot of new information, even though we're not technically talking about the notice of motion. We have found ways to drop new information into the conversation nonetheless. And I appreciate, Marilana, your commitment to sharing that, that study. Can't wait to read it. Given that the Mayor's Corner is a public communication tool of the municipality, and one that is generally afforded to you as mayor in order to share information with the public, but it's not a tool that the rest of the members of this council have at our disposal. I wondered whether in the section of this week's Mayor's Corner where you will share the information you've brought forward tonight, would you also be willing to share some of the other information that's come out, such as the case study, Better Tent City in Kitchener, such as the FAQ put forward by the Northumberland Sleeping Cabin Collective, so that members of the public have an opportunity to review all of the information in advance of our next meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Clare, for that suggestion. I think we can find a place on the municipal website to post all the relevant information. Councillor Mink.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just feel a need to acknowledge that every question asked is a valid question. Every single person here has the opportunity to ask their questions. They have an opportunity to fear. They have that right as much as anybody does. So when I hear this NIMBYism, that there's the people welcome are saying, not in my backyard, I don't want these people here. The questions I'm getting from the welcome community are valid concerns, sharing their experiences living in welcome with limited services and what the culture is like north of the 401, whether it's 1 kilometer or 100 kilometers, the service levels change, the culture changes, and they're sharing their lived experiences with living in welcome and what that is like. And that's the feedback that I have received and the questions that I have received. And they just want answers to that. So I just want to be very mindful that everyone has an opportunity to ask their questions on both sides and not get into this NIMBYism pointing fingers. Please, let's let people express their concerns.
Thank you. Yes, please introduce yourself and maybe bring the mic down. Oh, push the button.
Susan Smith, I live in Canton. First of all, Vicki, you might not want to. Vicki mentioned something I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say it about not in our backyard. But all throughout this last 4 days, all I've seen on social media when you mention a place in town, no thanks. It's been the same thing. To me, these people need to be close to amenities. That's just my opinion. But now that I've heard the mayor has been in contact with the county and such, maybe you won't have to go through with this motion. If you do have to go through with this motion, why is it just thrust onto welcome? Why were there not more properties looked at to consider? And the way I also heard about it on social media was that the 2 initial people that had cars and needed cabins chose welcome. Well, it doesn't work that way. You're supposed to find places that are compatible to them to live, to have what they need. Like, unfortunately, isn't north of the 401. It's in town where everything is. Why is this motion just specific to Welcome now? Not enough properties were looked at. Can't you change the motion? Pardon?
Okay, let's keep in order, and thank you for that question, and I'll turn it over to looks like Councillor Clare wants to take this, and I apologize to the room, but I have to take a bio break, so I'm going to turn the chair over temporarily to Councillor Clare.
Hello, Susan. Good to see you again. So for clarity, this property is one of 6 municipal properties total that have been looked at and reported to council through staff reports. So there were 3 properties in the initial staff report at the end of January, including George Hamilton School and 2 other properties in town. It was 95 Mill and another one. Okay, we then directed staff through a resolution by council to go back and work with the sleeping cabins groups and work out which other properties might be appropriate, and to provide a report to council at a later date identifying properties that may be feasible. So we got a second report, which we received for information 3 weeks ago, that included 4 properties, George Hamilton again, as well as Lion Center Park, the fish cleaning station. Sorry, I don't know the actual municipal addresses for the other properties, and the parking lot at Town Hall. Each one of them was reviewed for why it was considered as a potential feasible location. Each one of them had some bullet points indicating issues that may be a barrier for feasibility. I can speak to why George Hamilton School was selected, why that's the one identified in the notice of motion, is that it's the one with the fewest barriers identified by staff. There were only 2 barriers identified by staff to the feasibility of that site, both of which were addressed within 5 minutes of that council meeting when I conferred with the Sleeping Cabin Collective. So that is why I moved forward with it. The others had barriers that would be actual planning barriers. Like, we may not actually be able to feasibly do the planning process and issue a temporary use bylaw for other constraints, like the fish cleaning station is in the floodplain, for example, and that might be a barrier to the temporary use zoning. The 2 barriers for George Hamilton were not barriers that would impact the feasibility of a planning process, and so that's why I selected that one out of the 4 that were presented to us in the staff report.
Did you look at the town park up that way near the, the facility, which would have had washrooms, water, the whole gambit? It's private.
So that was not one of the locations that was presented to us in the staff report. So, here at the council table, we provide direction to staff. We trust in our staff to go and do the work. They spent 7 months back and forth working with the Sleeping Cabin Collective and came forward with those 4 locations. So for me, in drafting the motion, those were the only 4 that I feasibly could include in a motion, because they were the only 4 that had gone through that vetting process and review by staff.
But there is more to look at. So why is the motion specific to this? Why wouldn't it just say looking for a place, or, identifying a place at a later point?
In all honesty, if you watch the recording of the last meeting, I did try to bring forward a motion worded almost exactly like that. And the request was made by staff that in order to move any further forward, like they had already done the work that they'd been directed to do by council. And it was requested by the interim CAO that any motion specify one of those 4 locations.
Okay, and may I ask the mayor, now they're back, when do you believe that you'll be in touch with the county again on this matter?
What I read out from county is that any of those individuals can reach out immediately to the appropriate office and be matched with an outreach worker without delay.
Which means this wouldn't be required to be carried forward with George Hamilton.
That is something for us to be discussing at our next council meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim Sculthorpe, 1685 Willow Beach Road. We have a very passionate community, and it's wonderful to see so many people here tonight. Thank you. This issue, I think, would be best dealt with at a public meeting. We have many people here tonight that have spoken very passionately in favor and with many concerns. But we have many people that aren't here tonight that are going to be here in 2 weeks. And we need the questions that have been answered tonight be heard by those people. Is it possible to have and what you're dealing with is you haven't been able to get it on the floor so that you could have a public meeting. But this issue needs to be brought to the public so that we all have an opportunity to speak and ask questions that's not in a organized council meeting. So if you could organize a public meeting and give us all the opportunity that you want to give us, then you can make the decision from hearing all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion, and both myself and Councillor Clare want to say something about this. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. It's something certainly that we've been contemplating as a council in terms of our new procedural bylaws, is how to better communicate, how to have special meetings, including town hall meetings, and bringing up subjects. And as I mentioned earlier, another thing that we have been talking about is how do we have a public meeting where we're talking about a whole host of options and not just one by one, because we're going to need to have a comprehensive plan, and we have to prioritize between a number of different options. And it's good for folks to see all the options and all the, all the possibilities in front of you and in front of us. Councillor Clare.
I couldn't agree with you more, which is why I put forward this notice of motion. The notice of motion calls for us to initiate a public planning process. The public planning process, as mandated by the Planning Act, will include notice being posted, notice going out to adjacent neighbors, and after 21 days notice period, a public meeting solely on this particular issue, where every resident who has a question or a comment or wants to be part of the discussion would be welcome to come and participate. So I 100% agree with you. That is what the notice of motion calls for us to do, and I remain hopeful that we'll pursue that.
I think one of the challenge is that many people in our municipality don't understand the process. And so we are afraid of something happening before a decision is made, and we say, oh my God, we didn't have an opportunity to speak to it. But we do have to allow our council to go through the process legally to get us to a point where we can have a public meeting. And I applaud you if you can do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think it's we changed a little bit of the ordering of our meeting. I think at this point, I'm going to pause the question period, and we're going to revert back to our agenda, especially given the time. So I'm going to turn it back to, and we are going to take a 5-minute break. To be continuing on with planning and development. So we're just waiting for the Deputy Mayor to join us. Councillor Clare, Councillor Mink. Okay, calling everybody back to the table. Yeah. Okay, our deputy mayor, if we can get him back, because he's chairing. That's it. Okay, the deputy mayor will reconvene chairing planning and development. So I'm turning the chair back to the DM.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We're going to head back to the agenda items 7.1, which are the staff reports in planning and development. The first report that we have is 7.1.1, which is staff report PD-42-23. Is there anything else that staff would like to add to this report?
Through the chair to the rest of council, this is pretty straightforward. Rezoning report is a condition of consent. We're pretty confident in the report itself, but happy to take any questions you may have.
Great, thanks. Any questions from council on this report? No, pretty straightforward. Great. So we'll go ahead with the recommended action, which is listed in the agenda. Can I get a yeah? Thank you. Yeah. All in favor? Yeah. Thanks. All in favor? Yeah. And so carried. Moving on to 7.1.2, staff report PD-44-23. Again, listed in the agenda. Anything else that you wanted to add to this?
The chair, the rest of the council, this is also relatively straightforward. We're seeking direction from council to initiate discussions.
Thanks very much. Any questions from council on this report? No. Can I get a mover and a seconder on this? Moved by Councillor Last, seconded by Councillor Clare. All in favor? All right. Thanks very much. And as we have already taken care of new business with planning and development, unless there is any other new business from council for planning? Seeing none, then we're going to close planning and development for tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So under corporate services, we have 5.1, staff reports none. 5.2, new business, I have none. Any other new business for anyone? Great. And I will pass it over to Councillor.
Thank you. And finance is open. Staff reports 6.11. FS 20-23, prescribed fees for service. Recommended action that staff be directed to post the draft fees and charges. Change of schedule on the My Port Hope Community Engagement website on the 2024 budget page for public awareness and to collect comments from the community, and that to the following community engagement, a bylaw be presented to council to approve the prescribed fees for services schedule effective January 1st, 2024, and repeal bylaw 80/2022. Director Baxter, do you want to make any brief comments on this?
Given the timing, I'll keep it really brief. Just really, we'd be looking to bring this back. We wouldn't approve it prior to the budget, but we'd be looking to bring this back around the same time as we're approving the budget, presuming that's prior to January 1st, just in due course. And we'll, as you said, we're posting it for awareness.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll take discussion? Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councillor Vicky. Questions? Vicky and then Claire.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a very brief question and then just a brief comment as well. The room rental fees, and I'm asking this question just because there is interest in the hub. When the room rental fees are different, how is the price based? Is it on square footage, amenities, or how is that determined?
Yeah, through the chair, it's has a couple of factors. It's mostly square footage and the type of usage of that room. Some of the rooms are established also based on the amenities, so if it has a kitchen. And typically the rates that have been established are historical. So they've been based on Jack Burger and Temp Park, based on the square footage, and that's how we determine the rates for the Ruth Clark at the time and for Canton.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to point out and to draw out the rural fire permit fees. And I know we have a report that's coming, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. I think that's going to be a positive change for the rural community. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and I look forward to it.
Thank you, Councillor Clare.
Yeah, my questions relate to the fees related to the planning department. So I'm not sure if I should either Director Baxter or Director Davis can answer. And my question is, was there any thought to reducing fees or even amortizing fees for planning services or applications that relate to municipal priorities like affordable housing? So for example, someone wants to put in an ADU, for example, they're being charged the same as something that is perhaps not in line with municipal priorities. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity there, if that's something that you've been thinking about from the planning perspective, or potentially in relation to what might be coming forward in a community improvement plan.
Through the chair to Councillor Clare. So the way that my portion of the organization operates is as a fee for service piece, and we're really talking about planning applications generally, and those are we try to make them reflective of what it costs to do development. Additional residential units are an as of right ability on on any given property. So as long as they're within the zone standards that are afforded to them, there's no need for there should be no need for a special planning application to allow for that to happen. So there shouldn't be a planning related fee to add an additional residential unit, as for instance, to your property. There would be potentially a building permit related fee in order to construct, but not in order to allow. We allow that to happen, provided it fits within the standard of the zone. Other than that, the changes to our fees are to reflect the costs of development or planning applications in our neighboring jurisdictions, which are substantially greater than ours, and recognizing that we're going to need to marshal resources to manage what we anticipate to be more development happening in Port Hope.
Any further questions of council on this matter? You only get one more.
I would ask the same question to Protective Services that oversees the building services. Perhaps I got that wrong in my notes there, but I did note that there is like a $3,000 odd fee that relates to garden suites and other like basement conversions and that kind of thing. And I'd wondered if there's any consideration of that in relation to the ability of community members to advance municipal priorities.
Through the chair to Councillor Clare, earlier in 2023, Protective Services, Building Services, and Municipal Law Enforcement undertook a fee study as part of a service delivery review. That particular item was not identified. Similar to my friend with planning, building is a self-funded business unit. Therefore, we have to charge the right amount of fees to keep the lights on. And at the end of the day, if we could break even, then we're doing good. Unfortunately, we're not with the fees, and that's why we've actually, and you'll see in the fees bylaw, we've actually looked to amend some of them to reflect the much needed changes in our municipality.
Thank you. Councillor Clare, you okay? Any more? No?
Actually, just to follow up to those two questions, is there a way of, given our priority around more homes, is there a way to offset the costs for those kinds of applications with other projects to creatively incentivize?
Through the chair to the mayor to respond to that question. So certainly, so the reality is we charge our fees as part of the bylaw means that I have to charge the fees. If it is always at council's discretion to waive those fees through resolution. So if we ever, if someone was to go through the process, indicate that they were going to bring affordable housing, and it was at the discretion of council that you wanted to waive some of the planning application fees, in particular, that is at your discretion and has been done by previous councils.
Thank you.
I would also just note that, and I'm not sure. I haven't reviewed. I would defer to the Director of Finance, but oftentimes, and as part of the development costs of building in our community, especially in the urban area, you need to pay development charges. However, if you're building affordable housing, if I'm not mistaken, there's some reduction related to that as imposed by the provincial government. So that is certainly also a way to reduce the cost of development for affordability is the ability to waive or reduce some of those fees. But I don't know the particulars, and I would defer to my peer on that one.
I think you said it well, Todd. There are some parts they're relatively new and ones that we're not experienced with yet, but there are aspects in there. The other aspect is through a community improvement plan. Can be done, which we're going down the road of doing. The challenge is though is that it still needs to be funded, right? So it's not we're just not going to take it in. It's that we're going to add to the tax levy to provide almost like a grant, essentially. On that front. So not saying one's better or worse, but that's the exactly right. There are some avenues, and I'd refer you to, I believe it was the last meeting we had our annual report from 2022 of development charges and how underfunded they are, and also how I believe it's a deficit 2 years in a row. As the Director of Protective Services was just speaking to in terms of the building department, right? So that's why we're going through and doing these updated studies. We're changing the fees, and there's more to come.
Thank you to both directors. Any further questions of council? We have a motion for the recommended action. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. 6.1.2 staff report. FS 2123 regarding the 2022 grant summary, and the recommended action is to accept this report for information purposes. Anything pertinent in there? It was pretty self-explanatory. Director?
Shruti had some good notes. At this point, I've suggested she head home for the night. She's still got to drive, but she did want to point out. So the report identifies that our formula-based funding, which is more predictable, fewer in quantity, but over 2.3 million. So certainly helpful. Then we have the application-based funding. We were successful in 19 applications at 761,000 in total. So we secured grants last year of $3.1 million. That was a 27% increase in the total grant funding from the prior year, a 44% increase in application-based grants, and a 17% increase in formula. That is all great news in terms of increases in trajectories. I do note, though, that year over year, right, it's very dependent on how many grants are out there. You can put a ton of work, into a whole bunch of grants and not have a ton of success. Or you can put work into one grant that happens to be there for a specific year, like the Town Park Rec Center, and the numbers skyrocket. So, but I thought it was just helpful to have a bit of that awareness that they are. Generally, though, we are seeing the available grants, right, are becoming less, especially from our upper levels of government right now. So just a bit of the economy as it is.
Thank you. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Adams, second by the Mayor. All those in favor? Thank you. And before we get into new business, and I want to turn it over to Director David Baxter for some announcements on the budget. The good news is we're not in the position Toronto's in of $1 billion shortfall, but we're getting there. Director?
Perfect. So there was some mention earlier. Thank you, Mayor, for the promotion on the budget. Some general context. So you recall at the beginning of July, we kicked off the budget, identified some of the items, some of the challenges, some things we were looking at. As you know, the infrastructure funding challenge is only increasing due to inflation. And in addition, we have operational service costs increasing as well. So that being said, we're doing a lot of work right now to try and find a balance. There's lots of good ideas that we aren't going to be able to include, and I know council recognizes, that there's going to be an element of that. But we're trying to continue to balance our service levels with the cost and resources that we have. To that end, we do have the survey, of which there are cards at the entrance. Tomorrow night, we're going to be at the Town Park Rec Center from 4 to 6. And encourage people to attend, and also be promoting the survey then as well. And then in addition to that, next Wednesday, we are going to be back here from 5 to 7, going through, as was requested by committee, the community grants and the donations to make that determination prior to going into our budget deliberation days. And while I'm on that topic, our two weeks later, our 2 full budget days, starting at 9 a.m., will be on November 28th and 30th. So it's coming up very soon, and I just want everyone to be aware, of the progress that we are, and we'll be providing information as soon as we can for your review. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my second topic is just, kind of aligned with that. As you know, every quarter we provide a Q3 report. We've been trying to manage that as best we can. The one of our staff who was picking that up from a position that we were not afforded last year through the budget is now working on another gap that we have in our staffing. And we are now at the point where we have inadequate resources to be able to produce that report. So we will not be producing a Q3 report, and just letting Finance Committee be aware, because normally we would have that in front of you.
Thank you again. So last year's budget key catchword was inclusiveness. This year's is no. And on that happy note, is there any further questions of finance? Seeing none, I will bypass you and turn it over to Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Councillor Les. Parks and Recreation and Culture is now open, and we have a couple staff reports today. Exciting. 8.1.1 is our leisure service master plan implementation update. I believe everybody has had an opportunity to read the document there. Does any council member have any questions about? Mayor?
I just have a question about, this is such a remarkable piece of work, and I don't feel like we're going to be doing it justice at 5 to 10. I want to acknowledge the work and the details, and I think there's a lot to talk about here, and I'd like to, with all respect, just defer this to our next meeting so we can have a fulsome conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can we just defer that? Do we need can I get a seconder on that? Chris, all in favor? Thank you. And we'll move on to 8.1.2, the Port Granby Nature Reserve update. Any questions? I see none. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive this for information? Councillor Chris, Mayor Elena, all in favor? And pass. Thank you. New business. We will skip that for the night. And Parks and Rec is closed, and we'll move over to Councillor Claire with Works and Engineering.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Works and Engineering, we do have a couple of staff reports this evening. The first is the first 9.1.1 about the water use and backflow prevention bylaw. Director Davidson, did you want to make any comments?
Just in the interest in time, I would just note that the municipality is committed to ensuring that safe drinking water is provided to its customers. The proposed bylaw will provide guidance to staff, members of council, and members of the public when dealing with water-related matters. This bylaw will promote consistency within our applications, allowing staff to follow through on protecting the integrity of the water system through verification and enforcement measures. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? No, seeing none, I will just say I found it to be a very interesting read. More from the perspective of, I can't believe we don't have a bylaw that says we can do that yet. So thanks for bringing this forward. Could I have a mover and seconder please. Councillor Chris and Councillor Les, a seconder, all in favor. Thank you. The second report is 9.1.2, and that is regarding the Transportation Division truck replacement. Would you like to speak to this item?
So a total of $730,000 was approved by bylaw 09-2023 for the purchase of 2 new snowplows for the Transportation Division as part of the 2024 capital budget. So that was a pre-approval for the 2024 budget. The tender was issued and the new trucks will not be delivered until 2025, and is therefore recommended that the pre-budget approval from 2024 be reallocated to the 2025 budget with an additional amount of $194,000 to allow the tender to be awarded.
Thank you. I mean,
Hopefully not.
she's just going to make a face and not answer. But I can say that Director Davidson and members of the roads crew did give me a very thorough orientation to the current plows, and they're definitely in need of replacement. So the bad news is we don't get new plows, and hopefully these ones keep functioning. The good news is it takes a little pressure off of the 2024 budget. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Elena?
If we have complete failure on any of this equipment, is there a sort of a plan B?
A plan B would be contracted maintenance providers.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Have we ever leased this kind of equipment, or is that even a thing that's available?
For this style of vehicle, leasing is not an option.
I think we can speak to the fact that we have certainly, on a variety of other vehicles, looked at leasing options. A fleet strategy is one of those important items that we have not yet been able to afford the resources to put in place. It will be of benefit to the municipality of Port Hope once we do, but we're not there yet.
Any other questions?
Thank you. So through the chair, this increase, is it safe to assume that this is not a locked in, like it could be higher?
That is correct. So there is a caveat in the tender that if the prices will be requoted in 2025 prior to delivery, and we will be able to cancel at that time if we wanted to. However, we still require the vehicles.
So just a follow-up question, and I don't think this can be answered tonight, but when we do go into budget, is there an opportunity to save a bit more aside for this potential increase? Is that even an option that's on the table? In addition to this, like if it comes in at over $1 million when that time comes, to be prepared for that?
Any other questions? Not, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommended action. Mayor Elena, seconded by Councillor Chris. All in favor? Okay. The third staff report is with regards to the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority 2024 preliminary budget. Director Davidson, I know this isn't your report, it's from the GRCA, and I noticed they haven't stuck around.
So, yeah, this report brings forward the draft 2024 budget for the GRCA, and if there are any questions, we are happy to forward the questions to the GRCA.
Councillor Les?
Yes, in light of the Ford government and the delegated provincial responsibilities that may have changed, depending on if the government will exist longer term. Are we fulfilling the mandate to the Conservation Authority, and are they fulfilling their requirements to us? Because there was a whole bunch of stuff that was going to be taken off the table that they couldn't do, that we were paying for in our agreement, and I don't know if that's reflected in their budget. Just a topic for, I guess,
I think maybe if I can, I'll take that one. We're in active conversation with our colleagues at the GRCA
to negotiate what we need to now, which is a new MOU, memorandum of understanding, in order for them to deliver their services and have an understanding of how and what services we'll require. So that's a requirement as to the changes made through the provincial legislation. We're generally satisfied with the role the GRCA is fulfilling. We have more work to do to discuss exactly what that MOU looks like, but we'll be in a position to put that forward to council in the not too distant future.
Thank you.
Councillor Mink.
Yes, and I just want to, through the chair, make an additional comment that, being on the board, is that the GRCA is extremely diligent with their budget, and the last cutbacks and so on that were given 2 years ago now, they did an extraordinary job of not putting that on the municipalities compared to some other conservation authorities. And if we look at the 3.27 increase compared to some of the increases we see out there, they worked hard to come back to this, to not put that pressure on the municipalities. So.
Trust that we will do our due diligence on the services provided, and that's the question I had.
Any other questions? In which case, I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommended action that we refer their proposed budget to our 2024 budget deliberations. Moved by Councillor Todd, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you. And with that, I'll pass it over to Councillor Chris.
Oh, just one more little question that's not related to any of these. That in 2022 for 2023, we were going to roll out a bunch of water meters. How's that deployment going? I know it's not a levy item, but
the program is underway, and we're actually just getting started. So we are moving forward with the ICI, industrial, commercial, institutional water meters. They are ordered and they are in progress with. I believe installations will be starting very shortly.
do you think our completion rate is?
Q1 2024. Q1 2024.
Sorry, and sorry about that, Councillor Less. I should have asked for new business, and I didn't. Let's chalk it up to the time. And over to you, Councillor Chris.
Thank you. Protective Services, there's no new business, no new reports. Mayor Lenny.
So at the moment we've been all waiting for the adjournment. This concludes our business. We did question period. Yep. So, okay. Yep. No, we moved question period up. So this concludes our business to be covered on today's agenda. We've reached the end. 10:03 p.m. I'm adjourning the meeting. Thank you for all of you in the audience who are still here after the long meeting.